So like designers and engineers and people who like makers who work on these kinds of things, they have they're so out of touch with the stuff that they're actually making, and by the time it gets to users, that the learning cycle is so hard to bring back around. If I contrast, as a dad, if I contrast that with my kids, and when I see my kids play, the learning cycle is so fast. And it could be on something, homework that they're doing, but it could also be something just very trivial, something that they're just doing for fun that's silly. They're still learning and growing as people that way. And I'm like, I think we need a lot more of that in our work. I think that we would be happier as people. I think that we would make better things.
I'm going to be speaking to Dan Mall today. Dan would argue that in a perfect world, the design system is most effective when treated as an ongoing product as opposed to a one-off project. The themes around this podcast tend to be about making, and especially making digital products. This is going to be an interesting episode as we explore the perspective of the design system as a digital product. Let's get ready to take some notes. The first thing I want to say is I have some things on my radar that I'm aware of. So I know that you've started this thing called Design System University. You've written a new book called Design That Scales. I confess I haven't read it yet. I plan to. Fine, if you let me off for that.
No worries. Yeah, I have no blame, no judgment associated with that.
Right. And then you also recently wrapped up Super Friendly, which was your design systems consultancy. And there's something called Arcade. I don't know if it's still a thing for design tokens. So those are the things that are on my radar. Are there other things that should be on my radar?
Oh, I don't know about should be on your radar. There's always other things that I'm doing.
Okay.
The thing that I'm most excited about right now is my wife and I just started a company together called Great Job. And we're trying to use our combined powers of parenting and design to help parents and caregivers design their own handbook for how they want to raise their families and run their families. And so we've been leaning pretty heavily into that the last few weeks and months, and I'm thrilled about it.
Okay. So let me add that to my radar then. So the term that you seem to have at this point is design systems. Super Friendly was kind of packaged as a design system consultancy. Was that always the case? How did that come about? What was it something else before? Because I know the word design systems is barely in the vocabulary of some companies even up to now. So I'm curious about that journey.
It definitely wasn't the case the whole time. When I started Super Friendly, it was really just a fancy name for, Dan Mall is freelancing, and doing work. And so I didn't intend to grow an agency or anything like that. I certainly didn't intend to be a design system consultancy. When I started it in 2012, I don't even know that the term design system had caught on in our industry quite yet then, even though people were doing a lot of the same kind of work. So it definitely was an evolution. Over the first, let's say, 4 or 5 years, a lot of the work that we were doing started to trend toward things like style guides and component libraries and things like that designers and developers were experimenting with and playing around with. And the term design system was evolving, and becoming more popular. So we started doing that work more and more with our clients, and the clients started to ask for it, not necessarily by that name quite yet, but started to ask about that kind of work. And as we did more and more of it, we liked it. We started realizing that we're pretty good at it. Our clients really liked the work that we were doing there. And then probably about 5 or 6 years in, so this was around 2017, 2018, we just decided, you know what, this is the stuff that we really want to do all the time. And so we stopped doing as much of the app work and the website redesigns and the other kind of digital work and really went all in on design systems. And then probably a year after that, we said, we put it on the website. We are a design system consultancy. So it definitely was an evolution over many years as we evolved in it, and then as the industry kind of evolved in the understanding and in the proliferation of design systems.
And how did that change the the type of clients that started seeking you out? And were there moments of anxiety about narrowing things down?
I probably for every freelancer or agency owner or studio owner, there's always anxiety. You live with the anxiety, right? I think that's part of the job. I definitely had a lot of heartburn around. It's tough when you say that you're not going to be doing a thing because it feels like you're shutting off a pipeline. It feels like you're shutting off a whole arm of revenue, of clients, of people who want that thing that you're no longer doing. So there's definitely a lot of risk in doing that, a lot of worry in doing that. I certainly had that. But I've also seen and read and talked to people and worked with people who have had a lot of success in sort of picking a very specific niche or a specific positioning. I'd seen some of the benefits that come from that too. So I think we were lucky in that we saw a lot of the benefits of doing that early on. So it
Mm-hmm.
made the risk a lot more tolerable. And it also made it so that we got more comfortable with that idea as we did it more and more of it.
Okay. Okay. Um, so I'm really interested in design systems in baby steps. I'm talking about, I saw an interview with Dive that you did, and a small team in that interview was 10 designers. And just to give you some perspective, I'm working on projects. We're headquartered in Jamaica. We do projects for people in, all over the place, but quite a few of our projects, as a result, are not at the scale of 10 designers. That would be a large project to be fair. For us, a small project is somebody wearing multiple hats.
Right.
So,
Sure.
how do you justify where there's clearly a point at which design systems make sense, and there's a threshold at which we're not ready for design systems yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And and for what it's worth, I've worked with organizations that have hundreds of designers and engineers that manage thousands of digital products. And I've worked with organizations that have one designer who is, like you said, wearing multiple hats. They're the brand designer and the product designer and the logo designer and all of that. So I agree for sure that there is definitely a time where a design system makes sense and a time where a design system does not make sense. I think for a lot of large teams, design systems really prove their value at scale. So that's why the big companies, the big organizations, the enterprises, that's why they really benefit from a design system, because a design system is not easy to set up, no matter what kind of design system you're talking about. It's not easy to set up. So even the investment made in setting that up and the time in that for a lot of companies just doesn't make sense. You won't get the return, or you won't see the return soon enough to warrant the investment. And I think that's okay. I think I'm certainly not one of the people who believe that everybody should have a design system and it should be the first thing that you build. I think it should be warranted, and it should be a calculated investment that you make. That investment usually returns well at scale at enterprises. For smaller teams, it doesn't often return well. So for startups, even a startup that's well funded, that has maybe a dozen designers on the team, is a design system right for them? Maybe not yet. Maybe not in the early stages, because what's more important to them from a priority standpoint is figuring out their product market fit more than it is about systematizing the way that they do interface design, right? That becomes a later problem, because a design system is an optimization solution. So
Mm-hmm.
before you have anything built, you're not optimizing anything yet, right? Like you
Right.
don't even know what the systems are yet. So, then if you take it even smaller scale, a designer who is wearing multiple hats, do they need their own equivalent of material design? Absolutely not. That's overkill. What they might need is one Figma file or a code library that has 2 or 3 components in it that they reuse a bunch of times. Hey, I put my type over here in this Figma file so that I can reuse it very easily. I've got my headlines in a waterfall so that I can use that. Or I've got, my color palette. Like, that's the design system. And that can be a fine design system, for a team that size. So I think that the size of the design system has to be proportionate to the size of the enterprise or the size of the problem they're trying to solve over and over again. When that balance is off, it's usually something that's not fruitful. If a small team has a big design system, it doesn't work. If a big team has a small design system, it doesn't work. So I think the size of the design system has to be proportional to the work that the team is actually doing.
Right. And of course, as it's you've made it very clear there is a scale at which you don't need a design system at all.
For sure. I mean,
Right.
case in point, I run a thing called Design System University. I'm the only person that works on it with the help of my assistant. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have a design system for Design System University. How ironic is that, right? But it's because we don't need one right now.
Shouldn't say that out loud, right?
Right? Yeah. If I admit that, they'll revoke my design system card. I think my
Right.
membership.
Right. That's interesting. That's interesting. Uh, I'm pulling some stuff from the so I've done some reading around and stuff from things you've done, and one of the things that inspired me from presentations that you've done is rapid iteration for learning. Uh, I don't remember the title of the presentation. I just remember these kind of contrasting these tiny loops versus this one big loop and speed of learning. That's very important. It's very important for me when I'm doing rapid prototyping, trying to encourage my customers to get a prototype out the door so that they can learn quickly and then do it over and over again. I don't know if you have comments about that, but I'm just saying
I
that's
do. You know, I work a lot with enterprises, and one of the things, and that's a very unique and privileged position to be in. And it's really cool. It's an interesting scenario. Then that's what I like most about it. But sometimes business is too serious. Like I know it has to be. Like I know
mm-hmm,
it's business. We're talking about millions and billions of dollars and hundreds of millions of users, and there's risk and there's scale. All of that stuff like is important. I don't mean to trivialize that, but
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
I work with a lot of teams and they just don't seem to have fun. Because the learning cycles are so stretched out. We build a thing and we launch it and it takes a year to go to market. And then by the time you do that and you see those results, I mean, you might not even work at the company anymore. So like designers and engineers and people who like makers who work on these kinds of things, they have they're so out of touch with the stuff that they're actually making. And by the time it gets to users, that the learning cycle is so hard to bring back around. If I contrast, as a dad, if I contrast that with my kids, and when I see my kids play, the learning cycle is so fast, and it could be on something, homework that they're doing, but it could also be something just very trivial, something that they're just doing for fun that's silly. They're still learning and growing as people that way. And I'm like, I think we need a lot more of that in our work. I think that we would be happier as people. I think that we would make better things. I was just reading yesterday the idea that when you learn more, you're more productive. And when you're having fun, you're more productive. And so if we've eliminated the learning cycle and eliminated the fun, it's no surprise that we're not productive as an industry, because we've removed some of the things that actually are critical ingredients in how we produce things and how we can make things. And so I think we need a lot more of that stuff. And so that's why I try to do my part to help encourage people that, let's do things fast. Some things we can do fast. Some things don't have to be perfect. Some things we can just get out the door and see how it goes. Some things we can just play with. And personally, I'm trying to find more and more ways of incorporating play into my own work. I don't always succeed in that. It's hard
mm-hmm.
sometimes because I think we're conditioned to go like work is serious, play is something that you do outside of work. And I don't think that has to be the case.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. That helps to crystallize it. It's definitely something, as I say, has influenced me. The other thing that influenced me is you did this presentation on setting the table. You gave this story about it was basically a kind of restaurant, and the argument was when you're presenting your work to customers, you don't just say, here, you know, you want to present it to them, explain what the things are for. With the restaurant analogy, you might say, this was plated in this way, and notice the greens on this side, and so on and so forth. And so the person has a vocabulary to speak about the thing that you're handing to them. Again, your comments.
Yeah. I've been lucky. One of my favorite things in the world is eating at some of the best restaurants in the world. that's like been a mission of mine, is like as many of those things as I can do. I like traveling. I like going to
Hmm.
places that have delicious food, because I was a very picky eater as a kid, and I only as an adult I realized like, oh, there's a lot of good food out there that I've never tried. So so I try to do that. And if you notice the difference between some of the most expensive or fancy restaurants in the world and some of the cheapest restaurants in the world, well, if you go to a cheap restaurant, they just plop the plate down in front of you and then you eat. At a fancy restaurant, they take time. They tell you where things are from, what they are, some things that you might not, have never heard of, so that you have a way to understand what you're doing. And when you eat, it's not just your sense of taste that actually makes the meal good. It's your sense of smell has a lot of effect on it. Your sense of sight has a lot of effect on whether or not you enjoy the thing that you're eating. So it's all of your senses play a part in whether you enjoy something or not. So why isn't that true? If we want to be high-end designers, why don't we work it like a high-end restaurant? I'm my birthday is in a couple of weeks, and I booked a restaurant for my birthday where we're actually going to go do tours before lunch. We're going to go do tours of the different kind of farms where they get the vegetables and where they get some of the food that we're going to eat later in the day, so that we understand the context of how it's harvested and how it's prepared, and I think my hypothesis is that that's going to make the meal even better, even more special, because I understand the context of it. Now, not every meal has to be that way. I'm not saying every design process has to be that way, but I think every once in a while we should treat our receivers, whether that's our stakeholders or our colleagues or things like people who are paying a lot of money to come to our restaurant and eat our food. Why not try to make that experience special for them by engaging all of their senses, their cognitive functions, their sight, their I don't know about tasting design, but maybe one day, but how is it that
Not
we
that
can
type of taste.
maybe not yet. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, how can we engage those things when
Right.
we're showing someone a design?
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned I saw somewhere where I would peg you as AI suspicious. You
Okay,
and
I like
uh,
it.
and it came from the way that you said that you don't think AI is good at remixing things.
I'm AI curious. I'll say that.
Okay.
Maybe I've
Okay.
graduated a level, or something like that. Um, I do think AI is good at remixing things. I don't think it's good at remixing things into something original. And I think that's the distinction between like what humans are better at right now. I mean, maybe that'll change sometime in the future. I don't know enough about AI to know where it's headed. To be able to be
Hmm.
confident in that. But like AI is really good. I mean, the way that AI works fundamentally is you give it training data, and then it spits the data back out at you in different forms based on what it's trained on. At least that's the way that I understand it. So, I mean, that's classic remixing. It's like if I've listened to a bunch of music, then I can create music that's probably going to sound like the music that I've listened to, right? The drum beats are probably going to be the same. The cadence is probably going to be the same. The lyrics are probably going to be similar, right? So, like, we do that all the time as humans. We remix things. And so AI has just higher capacity to do that than we do as humans. AI's ability to recall is better than ours. Our ability to recall is awful. Imagine like how many times are we like, where did I see that one website? And you're like, then you
Hmm.
tweet
Hmm.
about it, or you ask your friends or whatever. Like because our memories are just not designed for that. Whereas robots totally are. They're data storage that can get searched and queried and spit back out at you. So like I love the ability of AI to do those kinds of things. Whether AI can create something original on purpose, I think that's the gap, at least right now. Is I think AI creates a lot of original things by accident, and I think it
Hmm.
creates the semblance of original things because we're not familiar with it yet. But that doesn't mean that it's not appropriated from somewhere else, right? I think that's part of the big debate, or one of the big debates about AI right now is like it's just straight up appropriation in a lot of ways, and which I think well warranted that we should be suspicious of that, and be poking at that. So I like the promise of AI. I think it does a lot of things for us that we don't need to do anymore, which I think is great. I think that we still, as humans, retain the ability to do stuff on purpose in a way that robots can't do yet.
So it's not so much the remixing; it's probably the innovating, because
Exactly.
you learn by copying and remixing, and
Yes.
then what distinguishes you is that you've got enough reps in your remixes to the point where your remixes start to look like innovations.
And also taste, right? That's what we have that the machines don't have yet. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
taste.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you ask an AI like Midjourney or something like that to create a website, it will create something that looks like a website. And according to the ones and the zeros, it is a website. But we would
Mm-hmm.
look at it and we go like, that's not even a header because it's at the bottom of the page. Like it can't, but it
Mm-hmm.
looks like one. And we can interpret that because we have taste. And not only can we say what this is and what this isn't, but we can say that something is good or something is bad. I don't know that I've seen an AI be able to determine that. Even when you ask ChatGPT, like, is
Mm-hmm.
this a good place to go? ChatGPT is like, well, wait a minute, hang on, I'm not sure about that. You have to do some googling on your own, in order to find that out.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it is very conservative when it comes to evaluating something and discerning something in a way that humans, I think that's what we're really good at.
So I'm jumping back to design systems,
Sure.
right? Should you borrow design systems? So as a startup, you want to move fast. You don't want to kill the startup building a design system. Should you just borrow something, borrow material design or something built around Tailwind or something like that? Is there any value in that?
So like I like to design systems are such an abstract thing sometimes that I like to relate it to some concrete things. So like I like to tell
Mm-hmm.
stories, I
Mm-hmm.
like to use analogies and metaphors. It's like to me the first thing I thought of was like, should I borrow sugar from my neighbor or should I go to the store to go buy my own sugar? And it's like both of those are viable. If I
Mm-hmm.
need sugar right now and I only need it right now, I'll go next door. Hey, can I borrow some sugar? I'm out of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I roll with it.
And if you did, that's perfectly fine.
If
Mm-hmm.
I, and I know this metaphor is going to break down, but similarly, if you want
Yeah.
to get something up and running for your startup, you need to get something, to market, you want to get in front of customers, using material design or Chakra or, any of the open source design systems out there, they're great. You're not going to be able to spin something up that fast, that well, in that amount of time. But for me, when I've been working with teams, around the 2 or 3 year mark is when they start to fight the borrowed system. They start to take more stuff out of it than actually use it. That's when they start to
Mm-hmm.
go, well, material design doesn't have this thing built in. Of course it doesn't. It wasn't made for that. That's not what it's there for. And so at some point the borrowing runs out, and then you start to go, if we would have spent the last 2 years actually building our own, we would have been in a better place right now. So what I advise to teams is like, if you're okay knowing that in 2 years you're going to have to refactor the system and build it from scratch, fine, go ahead. And a lot of startups have that on the roadmap. They go, we're going to use this tech stack for now, and then in 2 years we're going to build a whole new tech stack. Great. If that's the case, use Material, use Bootstrap, use Tailwind, use all those things. It wasn't purpose built for the thing that you're doing, but that's okay because you're not going to run into those problems yet. But past a certain shelf life, 2 years, 3 years, something like that, I think that's where teams start to go like, yeah, but I need to put 3 buttons in this card, and it's actually takes me longer to customize material design than it does to just build this from scratch on my own. So I think it's about the shelf life that you expect from it. If it's anything longer than 2 or 3 years, it's probably worth the investment to make a custom one.
Right. And you've also mentioned teams with 2 or more products.
Yes, for sure.
So if you're still in the one product space, maybe you can buy some more time.
Yeah, you're not working at scale yet. You're not working with
Right.
patterns, and that's the whole point of a design system is to take the solutions that are already settled and not have to keep doing them over and over again. So
Right.
if you're building
Right.
one product, you don't quite have settled solutions. Maybe within that product, sure, but across your whole product suite, you don't know some of those patterns quite yet because you haven't experimented with them.
So I'm hoping that you can give us some practical stuff based on a concept that you put forward. And the concept that you put forward was that you said that design systems are more, I'm paraphrasing, they're more an exercise of curation than they are of creation.
Yes.
Um, and there's this idea of walking the halls and picking things and saying this is, but what does that look like in reality? And yeah.
In reality, I think it's making friends. I'm often asked the question like, what's the top skill that a design system team should have, especially to start? Like, you're the first designer, the first engineer, or whatever on a design system. What's the top skill that you should have? Is it like Figma prowess? Is it the ability to talk to stakeholders? Like, what is it? And I think it's the ability to make friends. Because if you can make friends, then you can be in people's business. You can be nosy, and they don't mind. And I think that's one of the core skills of a design system team, or a design system person who is the team, is like, you get to be nosy. You've got to be in people's business. You got to know what they're doing, because then you can spot the patterns. If you know that the other 9 designers on your team are all working on tables, now you can go, hey, everybody, do you know that all of us are working on tables? Maybe we should combine
Mhm.
forces. But if you don't even know that people are doing that, everyone's going to work on tables on their own. And then everybody's going to come up with something slightly different, because they're not connected. And that's the point of a system. Systems are connected. And so you can't connect those things if you don't even know what's going on. And you're not going to know what's going on if you're just sitting in front of your desk working in Figma or working on code or something like that. So the practical tip is, like, how do you get started collecting? That's part of the way I talk about it. Is, I agree, design systems should be more an act of curation than creation. I think designers on a design team should think of themselves more as collectors than creators. So these are things that I say to teams all the time. So you've got to know what to collect. That's the role, which means your job is actually not to sit in Figma, because that's what everybody else's job is. Your
Mhm.
job is to look at what they're doing and go, oh, I see how that thing is connected to that other thing, because you all are doing the same thing without even knowing it. And I can connect you. I can either connect you as like, hey, you two should talk, or I can connect your work and say, oh, don't work on that. This other person has already made that. You can use theirs. I think that's part of the practicalness of it, is like, just look at stuff. I think that's why a lot of design system teams rightly start with an audit, because they don't have the muscle of always looking at stuff. So they go, wait, we got to collect all these things, put them all in the same Google Slides or Figma or whatever, FigJam, whatever, and then look at them all so that we can notice what things are common between all of them. So I think that's the first step, is like, find a way to be looking at things, and then try to create that as a practice as the second step. Try to find a way that you're looking at things regularly, every Friday, once a month, some sort of ritual, some sort of practice that you have that allows you to always be looking at the things that other people are doing. If you're stuck in Figma creating, you don't have the time to be looking at what everybody else is doing. So design system teams have to be freed up from creating a bunch of stuff themselves, in order for them to have most of their job being walking the halls, looking at, climbing into Figma files and seeing what people are doing, all that kind of stuff.
Mm, mm, mm. So I'm curious about what you said the top skill is making friends. Um, I want to investigate that a little bit, because I don't know. Are you introverted or more extroverted? Just out of
I'm
curiosity.
probably an ambivert.
Okay. Okay.
But I think if I were to lean one way or the other, I think I lean closer to introverted than
Okay.
extroverted. On my Myers Briggs, I'm INTJ, so I definitely
Okay.
lean a little bit more introverted than extroverted.
Okay. That's fine. Because I'm sure that affects uh, the energy involved in making friends.
It does,
Um,
yes.
but
And so
and,
for
and I'm
me,
not even saying it's a chore, right? But I'm
right.
just raising it.
It does affect it. And for me, what that means is, like, as an introvert, my energy gets drained when I spend time with people, as opposed to extroverts. A lot of time their energy bar fills up when they spend time with people. So that's
Hmm.
why, if you have an extroverted product manager for a design system, that's great. That is a superpower. Me as an introvert, I have to ration the time that I spend with people. And that's why, to me, if it's a practice, then I already have the time rationed. I'm not going to spend time with people just whenever I feel like it, because that's what fills me up. I'm going to spend time with people every Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., because I know after that I'm going to crash and burn. So, like, if I can ration it, if it's a practice, I can make
Right.
time for it. I know there's a limit to it, and
Hmm.
those are the skills that kind of help introverts. Not all introverts are shy.
Right.
Some introverts are. Some Not all introverts are
Right.
quiet. Some are and some aren't. So it's really about energy distribution. And so if you can ration your energy distribution, this is a thing that I've learned for myself, then sometimes it's more okay than, like, oh, my job is just to constantly be in front of people. I mean, that's exhausting for me.
Hmm. 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 So again, you said making friends is the top skill. I'd love you to break out the next set of skills below making friends. So you're walking the hall, you're making friends. I need to know what the other skills are.
Sure. Okay. Number 2 on that list is prioritization. Um, there are so many design system teams that just try to do everything, because people request everything from them, and they have no way to say no to something, because they think that saying no means, oh, well, people want stuff from us. Why would we say no to them? Right? Because then they're not going to come back to us, which sometimes is true. So they have to have some sort of other rationale. They need something else to blame, something else to throw under the bus. That it's not because we don't like you that we're not giving you the card component that you're asking for. It's because of some other reason. And usually that reason, that what I found to be successful, is prioritization. So before people start asking stuff from you, you have to decide on your own and I can say how you can decide, but you have to decide on your own from some factors what you're going to work on and what you're not going to work on. Like, as a design system team, you can't work on everything. I met a team last year or 2 years ago, something like that. They have 100 people on their design system team, not just their design team, design system team. That's the largest design team I've ever
This
heard.
is separate from their design team.
Separate from their design team. And I'm like,
Wow.
whoa, that's incredible. And
Wow.
I asked them, what is the number one problem that you all face as a 100-person design system team? You know what they said? They said what everybody else says too. Not enough time to do the stuff that we need to do. I'm like, what? You have 100 people. How do you all not have enough time? And they're like, there's just a lot of stuff to do. So if a 100-person design
Wow.
system team can't get their stuff done, how much more of a 10-person team or a 1-person team? So I think it just illuminates the idea that it's got to be prioritization. You have to be able to say, for the next 6 months, we're going to work on forms only, which means that we're not going to work on tables. We're not going to work on cards. We're not going to work on it. We have an area of discipline. We have an area of expertise. We have an area of focus that we're going to be here for the next 3 months. And that way, every time when somebody says, hey, can we have a card component from you? You could say no, because look at our plan. Look at the plan that we published 3 months ago, that we posted in Slack, that we sent around in our email newsletter, that we, whatever it is, however you distributed that. This was our plan because of these reasons. Because if we picked forms, because if we tackle forms, we tackle 50% of what every team needs. So that's why we spent time there. And so just prioritization, drawing boundaries, setting boundaries, holding boundaries, that's really hard for a design system team to do. And so they need better ways to do that. They need to make friends, right? And that's why making friends is number one, is when you're good friends, they know, they accept when you say no to them. They go, oh, I get it. It's cool. The people who are not your friends are going to be like, why? How come you can't come out? How come you're always, it's like, well, those aren't really your friends because they don't understand why you're saying no to them. And they don't, your real friends don't have to understand why you say no to them because they know you still love them. So that's why making friends is number one. And then when you within the circle of friendship, and at work it could be acquaintanceship or whatever, cordial professionalism. Then within the circle of that, then people, when you say like, nah, sorry, I can't do that right now, people don't get as offended as much because they know you have their best interest in mind, right? You're already operating from that place. And so now you're able to say, we can't get to that right now. We're going to get to that in September. It's on our roadmap for Q4. It's on our roadmap for next year, and that prioritization is the thing that helps enable that.
Okay. So friends, priorities, and then?
Friends, and then priorities. And then I think the ability to get to work, like specialists who can do the work that you've actually prioritized to do and committed to do. So that's why a design system team can't just be a good product manager, who doesn't know how to design, who doesn't know how to code, who doesn't know how to deliver the things. Is you have to have people who can deliver on those things. So once you can do those things, then I think it's the time to go heads down and get to work. All right, we said we were going to work on forms.
And just stick a ping. When you say get the work done, who's getting the work done at this point?
Some practitioner on the team, a designer, an engineer, somebody who has a specialty in a particular thing like that.
Oh, and they're part of the design system team?
And they're part of the design system team, yes.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, tell me more.
So let's take. Is it okay if I start with an enterprise example, right?
Sure,
a large
that's
scale
fine.
example, okay,
That's
and
fine.
then we can dial it back.
Sure.
So an enterprise example. Let's say you work at an insurance company. I've used this example a lot. You work at an insurance company. An insurance company, they have multiple websites and apps and applications and all that kind of stuff. So on those things, you might have a card component that each app or each site or each whatever has its own different kind of card. Some cards have an image, some cards have a button, some cards have no button, some cards have a carousel in it, some cards have just a headline, some cards have a headline and description. So lots of different variations of that. The designer's job, once the design system team has made friends with all, let's say 10 different teams have 10 different cards. Once you've made friends with all those 10 different teams, once you've prioritized and say, okay, yeah, cards are a thing that we're spending time on this quarter, right? Then a designer maybe a product manager could start this, but I think that a designer should be collecting all of those things and go, okay, let me see how each of these 10 teams are doing their 10 cards. That might mean climbing into their files and looking at those things. It might mean climbing into their files and copying and pasting them over into your own new file so that you can kind of put them side by side. And then there's auditing work, and then there's prioritization work in that I think the entire team does together. So the designer would collect all of those in a FigJam or a Figma file or something like that and go, okay, of these 10, 4 of them have a button. Of these 10, 6 of them have a headline. Of these 10, only 1 of them has a video supported. Of these 10, 8 of them support an image, right? And kind of do some cataloging of going like, if we were to make our own card, which we shouldn't, that should be the last resort, but if we were to abstract all of these into one, what requirements would it have? What would be optional? What would we just leave out? And the framework that I like to use there is all, most, some, few. So what do all of the cards have in common? What do most of them have in common? What do some of them have in common? And what do few of them have in common? And the things that are all, well, you got to build that into your version. The things that are few, leave those things out. And then most and some are the trickiest because it's like, half of our cards support an image. So should our design system version of that card support an image? I don't know. That might be a workshop that you have to run with all the 10 designers. To help come to consensus, because what that indicates is there's actually not a consensus on how we use images here and how we use images in cards. We don't have a consensus. We have a consensus about headlines in cards because you know what? 8 of them already have headlines. They didn't come together and explicitly agree, but they all implicitly agreed without even knowing it. So our job as a design system team is to bring that to the surface and go, look, you all agreed on this without even talking to each other. But this other thing, we don't have any agreement on. So we do need to talk to each other and make that more explicit of an agreement so that we can move forward with, our card supports an image, right? Because you all agreed that, yeah, I'm going to need that soon, or no, I'm not going to need that ever on our team. So sometimes those conversations need to happen, and the design system team is the one that facilitates that conversation, but they can't facilitate it if they don't have the data to say 6 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 2 out of 10, whatever those things are. So that's what I mean about getting to work is someone has to be in the pixels, literally looking at those things. And then the same thing on the engineering side, the engineering equivalent of that. Well, their cards have these props, but these cards have these other props. This card has this kind of interaction, whereas this one doesn't support if you put a button in it, it breaks. So the same thing on the engineering side, and then you need to facilitate those discussions. Oftentimes, product managers can start that work. A lot of them don't have the subject matter expertise in Figma or in React or in whatever to actually finish those conversations with the individual contributors. So that's what I mean about getting to work is someone who has that specialty has to look into those things and start to surface those things to be able to talk about and hold those agreements.
Right. So what's emerging in my mind is that the composition of a design systems team is more than just a curator. There has to be someone who might know React or Vue, and then somebody who might know Figma to become effective once you start hitting the ground.
That's right. Yes, exactly. Because otherwise, you can't be a good curator. Imagine a curator of a museum who doesn't know anything about art. Right? It would not be a very effective curator. They would just be like, I don't know, I like this thing, or I like these colors, and people who do know and appreciate art will come in there and go like, what is this? Like, I don't, And so to be a good curator, you have to at least know something about the subject matter. Now, does a curator have to be a painter? No, they don't have to be. They might be, that might be what skill that they have, but that's not a requisite skill. So I think some amount of it is useful, some amount of it is required, but it doesn't require you to be a practitioner to be a good curator. It does require some subject matter familiarity or the ability to have someone on your team that you can rely on to do that. So I think that's why team composition is such an important part of a design system team.
Okay. So just so you know, we're at the point in the interview where I'm paying attention to the time because I know that we have limited time here, right?
Sure.
So at some point, the way that I'll wrap up is I'll probably ask you a few takes around other things you've said.
Okay, sounds good.
But for now, especially with what you've said a while ago, I'm really interested in who are the major roles that you rub shoulders with, or who do you say you support the most when it comes to your design systems work?
You mean me personally?
Yeah, or the role of the design systems practitioner. I hear you use product managers and designers a lot. Um, I suspect developers might be part of that, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I
So,
see. I mean, I can tell you about what I've seen on a typical design system team makeup. Like, yeah,
mhm,
my recommended size for a design system team is anywhere from 3 to 8 people. I think that's kind of a sweet spot. The
mhm,
caveat that I'll put on that is I think a design system team should look like any other product team at that organization. So if most product
mhm,
teams at an organization have 12 people, then your design system team should have 12 people. If most product teams have 4 people, then your design system team should have 4 people. Because I think if it looks different, then people are going to go, that's different. They're not a product team. It's like a design system is a product. We're just working on a different product than everybody else is. We're working on an internal facing product for our employees and for our team, whereas they are working for something for our end customer. So but we're still working on product. So I think
mhm,
it should look like that. So the 3 to 8, 3 to 8 people, I think there should be a product manager on a design system team or a product owner, somebody who is in charge of the design system, who is responsible for it. That if it goes south, this is the person to blame. If it goes well, this is the person to praise. Somebody who is in charge of that. That I think a design system team has probably 1 or 2 designers on it, probably 1 or 2 engineers, and that to me is the core. That's 5. Um, I like to see a few other roles. Not every organization can afford them or values them. I like to see a writer or a content person on the design system team. I sometimes like to see a QA person on the design system team. And then I like to see sometimes a business analyst or a strategist on the design system team. That is a cross-disciplinary, cross-functional team
mhm,
that
mhm, mhm.
ideally other teams like that, other teams at your organization also look like that and have that makeup. But I think that allows the design system team to be holistic, to consider
Mhm,
all
mhm.
perspectives, and have a lot of empathy for what other folks in the organization are doing.
Right. I like a lot of what you're saying in terms of optimization is part of the job of it's an optimization job. It's not a startup job for
Exactly.
a design
Yes.
system. And the scale that you're talking about, where a team could be as many as 12, is definitely kind of confirming that.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
so, man, I lost my train of thought. I wanted to ask you about something and it's gone now. Should write these things down. Uh, it's fine. I will just have to go back to my prepared questions.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. So there, there's this idea of getting it right the first time, which is probably a bad idea. Um, but it seems tricky to get people out of that mindset that we failed because we didn't get it right the first time. And in fact, I'm remembering my question now. You have this 90 days of, and maybe we can combine the two ideas, 90 days to a design system. And when I first came across it, uh, I didn't have any impressions, but then there was more context. As told, 90 days is really fast for a design system. And I was thinking, okay, clearly the world that I'm living in, because I'm doing rapid prototyping and stuff like that, is a different world. um, but I'm curious about this. What's the timeline for a typical design system if 90 days is really fast?
David, that is such a tricky question.
Right. I'm sorry. That's the
No,
how
that's
long
okay.
is a piece of rope question.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind. I don't mind talking about it. I think
Right.
there's a bunch of pieces to unpack in order to answer that
Right. Yeah.
question, right? So the
Yeah.
first one is like, what kind of design system are we talking about? If we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
a Figma UI kit,
Mm-hmm.
90 days, you can do one in 9 days. Some people can
Mm-hmm.
do them in 9 hours.
Right.
Why do we need 90 days to build a design system in Figma or a design system in Sketch? We don't need that. So
Mhm.
for different kinds of design systems, like 90 days feels way too long to make a design system. For other kinds of design system, and to me, one of the most mature kinds of design system is a design system as a practice. It's something that organizationally we do. Oh, we do this thing over and over again using these tools that we've built or we've procured, right? And this is the way that we do work. That is a cultural change problem. That is a digital transformation problem. 90 days is really fast for digital transformation, right? Like
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
something that, like, to me, the biggest parallel to a design system practice that I've seen is agile. So how long does it take a company to adopt agile? 90 days? No way. No chance. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year, right? There's usually some long rollout of that. And it's because we have to practice it over and over again. And the first couple times, we're going to get it wrong because we suck at it. We haven't done it before. So I'm certainly a believer that getting it right the first time, maybe it's just because I'm not that good at my job, but I've never gotten it right the first time. Very rarely do I get it right the first time. So I want the permission to go, like, it's cool if you don't get it right the first time. Whew, great, risk averted there.
Mhm.
Because if
Mhm.
otherwise the pressure is too high if we have to get it right the first time. And so I want the chance to do things over and over again, because when we do things over and over again, we get better at it. Like that's true of everything in life. When I play video games, I suck the first time I play. The more times I play, I get better. When I play basketball, I suck the first time I play. The more times I play, I get better. If I play 10 times or 10 times a week, I get better than if I played 2 times a week. So it's like, if that's true for everything in life, how is this not true of the digital work that we do, whether it's design systems or shipping a product or prototyping or, whatever those things are? Like, we say we value iteration and things like that. So then we got to prove that. We got to stand behind that idea that the first thing we launch can't be the right thing. How could it be? Like, that would mean we were perfect. And, like, that certainly doesn't jive with my worldview. I don't think that people are perfect. I think that people are
Mhm.
imperfect, and we try hard, but, like, to say that we have to get things right the first time is just too much pressure, at least for me. So, that's why design system in 90 days, it's not about, well, you're going to do it, and then each thing you're going to do, and it's going to take 90 days, and then you're done. No, it's in 90 days. That's the time frame where you can try things over and over again and go, okay, that thing didn't work. We're going to tweak it. We're going to do this. Like, 90 days actually gives you about 3 tries. That's what
Mhm.
that in a
Mhm.
3-month time frame, when I work with a team, I go, let's work on this for 3 months and let's try it 3 times once a month. Right? Every month we get a try. And every time we can increase the stakes a little bit, to make it, as we learn things, we can actually increase the pressure because we have higher capacity now to handle that stuff. And so to me, the 90 days is the shortest time frame that we get enough tries that we can spot some patterns. And, as you kind of pointed out, I'm a big believer that 3 times is a pattern. If it's twice, it could be a coincidence. If it's
Mhm.
once, it
Mhm.
could just be chance, right? But after a thing happens 3 times or 4 times or 10 times, you're like, I see what's happening here. Like, I get the pattern now. So 90 days gives you enough time to repeat something a few times over and over again to find out. If you look at my workbook, Design System in 90 Days, the last 2 steps are basically repeat everything that you just did. That's the second to last step. And then the last step is repeat everything you just did again. That's what the last step is. And because that's what makes it a practice as opposed to a project. If it was a project, we would do it. We would do it once. We would be done at the end, and then we move on to the next project. But design systems aren't that. At least that's a design system as a project is only one kind of design system. And I think it's not a very mature one for a lot of organizations. They need a practice. They need something that they can do over and over again. When are you done agile? Never. You're never done agile. Your
Mhm.
company is
Mhm.
agile until the end of time. When are you done working on your design system? Never. Until your company shuts down, you should always be working on your design system if it is a tool that helps you. You're always going to get better at it. You're always going to improve it. You're always going to find new things that are interesting about it that you didn't know up front, as people use it. That's what a product is. And so I think we need those kinds of that kind of permission, and we need that kind of runway to be able to get better at things. Not the expectation that, do we do it once and it's perfect and we nailed it and now we move on.
All right. I'm hearing the project product practice thing. And it's funny though, if there's a lot of lip service to agile. Every company that I've interacted with is agile, and they have all the talking points. And you have high expectations until things start behaving very not agile.
That's right. Yep.
Um,
And the same
but
thing is true of design systems. There's a lot of
yeah,
lip service to design systems. And then when you really look into it, what they're talking about is like, oh, all right, we don't have a design system practice. We have some Figma files, which is like, that's cool. But
you have a
those are
kit.
different things. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
have a
have a
UI
kit.
kit. That's
Yeah,
the kind of design system you have. Okay, cool. That's very different than we have a process. Right?
right,
Like those are
right.
two separate things. And I think it's worth acknowledging those things. And that's why, in the book that I wrote, I talk about agile. I can't not talk about agile because it is a good parallel. It's a thing that we all want to do. We all sort of believe in the tenets of it and the benefits of it. But when it comes down to implementing it, it's hard. It's difficult. We don't always get it right. Some teams do better than others. Some teams do better than others sometimes, but we keep trying to do it, and we keep trying to acknowledge, okay, this was a flaw in the last time we did. That's the whole point of a retro. Okay, we didn't do this ideally the way that we would want it to. Let's try it again on the next sprint and try to correct some of those things that we wanted to do a little bit more of or do a little bit less of. And I think design systems should go the same way.
Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Mostly because we're running out of time, of course, right?
Fair enough.
But thank you for your time, Dan. I am, I wasn't sure if you were going to say yes.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm thank you for asking me, and
Yeah.
happy to do it.
Yeah. And the stuff that people should be looking out for beyond DSU and your latest book, is there anything that, as I asked earlier, that people should be looking out for? Well, yes, the stuff with your wife.
Yeah. If for those who are parents or caretakers,
Mhm.
or soon to be, or interested, it's funny. We have a small part of our audience that's not parents that are
Right, of
just like,
course.
I'm interested in this subject matter, either because some of them want to be parents or are going to be parents soon, and some of them are like, I think these are just good habits for any human to have, and I have no interest in being a parent. So it's
Mm.
interesting to me. Anyway, that's that's the stuff to look forward to from us, is that we are going to be releasing a bunch of stuff that help parents run their families. And I think that there's a lot of overlap between how we can run successful teams, at work, because both the commonality is building culture, right? You're trying to build a culture that lifts people up. You're trying to build a culture that supports people, right? That's what families should be. That's what teams should be. So that's not to say that work is a family, or or to say that home is a business, or anything like that. I don't want to mix the.
You don't fire your kids, right?
Exactly. I don't fire my kids, right? I've tried to
That's a
before. I don't do
slightly different arrangement there.
exactly. So what would it look like? I mean, I've
Yeah.
read a bunch of books that say, what would it look like if you were not allowed to fire your employees? How would you treat them differently? And that's a big question. So anyway, like that's the same idea, is like you don't get to fire your kids, so what you get to do is you get to design the way that you all want to work together. And I think that's a really compelling and interesting and cool idea. So exploring that a lot lately.
Well, I'll keep my eyes open for that.
Yeah, thanks.
And
That's a great job. So the site is great. Yeah.
greatjob.kids.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dan. So we're basically done. I'm going to keep recording as we wrap up, just so
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah. So that's it.
All right. Awesome. How'd you feel about that?
Well, as you know, you may not know, this is number 6 for me. So I decided to experiment with this one by just trying to make it flow more. I found that it was a little stiffer when I was trying to hit all the questions. And so I've been kind of studying other podcasters and how they do stuff, and seeing how they flow and interviewing and stuff. So I'm getting my reps. I think this went well. Yeah.
Nice. What other podcasters are you like? Ooh, I want to be more like this person.
Well, interviewers. So like I look at Malcolm Gladwell, Joe Rogan. Who else was I looking at? I don't remember the name right now. And then I've also been reading up on interview styles, which is cool. Interesting. When you Google for interviewing, the first thing that comes up is interviewing for work and job interviews.
Ah, interesting. Yep.
So you have to filter and find the right thing.
That's cool.
But yeah, I'm getting my reps, and I'm following the thing of get as many reps so that you're learning. So
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, trying for 2 months at least.
Do you know about Seth Godin's podcast policy?
No, I don't know his policy.
Do you know who Seth Godin is?
Yeah. Yeah.
So his policy is he says yes to anyone anyone who asks him to be on their podcast. He says
Oh,
yes,
really?
but he always says I'll be on episode number 100
Ha.
because it's basically like he doesn't want to be on somebody's like first episode, second episode,
Right.
and then they stop on
Right.
episode 4, right? So
Right.
basically,
Right.
he's
Right.
like, you get your reps in, and then
Yeah.
I'll be on episode. So he actually has a lot of podcast number 100, episode number 100 that
Right.
he's been on.
Right. Right. Right.
Like, that's a pretty cool policy.
Well, thankfully, you don't have that policy.
I don't have that. Not yet, anyway. I don't know. I'm
Not
working on
yet.
it.
Right. 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 Right.